and welcome to the Smart Recovery Podcast, where we offer thoughtful conversation about a variety of recovery topics. You'll hear self-empowering and science-based approaches to making changes toward a healthier and more satisfying lifestyle and building a life beyond addiction. Our mission is for every podcast to provide you with the information and resources you need to guide your own successful recovery journey. If you or someone you know needs addiction-related help, we encourage you to visit smartrecovery.org, where you will find practical tools, connections to support group meetings, and links for additional resources. Remember that the purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. It is not a substitute for medical care from a doctor or other qualified addiction professionals. Before making any changes in your treatment plan, please discuss your thoughts with your medical provider. Now sit back and enjoy today's Smart Recovery Podcast.
Welcome to the Smart Recovery Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Frazier. Today on the program, we're going to be talking about all things geriatric mental health and addiction. We have a person here who has had a lot of experience in that field. She's going to tell us about some of that experience and some of the issues surrounding geriatric mental health and addiction. And her name is Brett Saarela. She is currently the Vice President and the Smart Recovery Board. Brett, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Luke. I'm happy to be here. Before we go much further, I just want to give a quick qualifier on the word geriatric, because that's been a real a challenge for us who work in the field. It is the correct term technically, geriatric medicine and that sort of thing, but it has become a difficult catch-all when you look at the literature and you look at the people that we're serving. It can include folks anywhere from 50 years of age and up. Sometimes studies start at 55 plus, and sometimes they go 65 and up or 75 and up. So it can be very misleading about who exactly we're talking about. They can have very different problems, be in different stages of life, and indeed have a very different relationship with substances and with mental health.
Yeah, well, that's a good qualifier. And it sounds like you have experience across that range of ages. And while we're on that topic, tell me about your experience professionally and a little bit about your education, if you would.
Okay, well, I had a traditional undergraduate background as a history major, and then went to work in the film and television industry for about a decade. Then obviously decided to change career and become a clinical social worker in New York, as one does, and knew I would work in the mental health field, which I did in a variety of places, and knew I would work with probably the dual diagnosis of substance abuse and mental health, but did not know that my heart would really lie with older adults. And that became sort of my passion and my specialty pretty early on. And the big job I had was at a clinic in the Upper West Side of Manhattan that only served older adults. It was a mental health clinic, but they did not serve anyone who had any kind of mental health problem. But they got a big grant to start serving this population and hired me to craft a program to start working with older adults. And in this case, it was 55 and up.
Okay.
And when I say and up, it was people going up into their 90s, some of whom were homebound. So it included both people who came into the clinic for regular, either one-on-one therapy and group sessions, but also going out to the home for people to do treatment in the home for people who had to have a dual diagnosis of a severe mental health problem and a substance abuse problem.
So going into the home, was that because of the population itself, or was that just a service that was offered customarily at that time, perhaps?
It was offered at the clinic because they were working with the geriatric population.
Mm-hmm.
So many of them they had to be medically homebound.
Okay.
And it would probably affected about a quarter of the people.
Okay.
And so it had to be that it's extremely difficult for them to come into the clinic.
Got it.
For some of them, it was part of their treatment goal to be able to come to the clinic at least some of the time.
Mm-hmm.
We could hook them up with, like Accessoride or get them a home attendant who could assist them. First, usually they needed to get a case manager or a care manager, and there are a whole series of steps
Mm-hmm.
about,
Mm-hmm.
why
But
someone
that might
needs to
be
come
one of
home.
their treatment goals, or one.
Exactly. It
Wow.
could be a treatment goal. Some were truly bedbound,
Mm-hmm.
though, and
Okay.
had not left the bed for
Right.
years.
Go back for a second. Now, when you were in film and television, did you make movies about the geriatric population? Is that what got you
Oh
interested?
no, oh no.
Okay.
This had nothing to do with it. I worked
Okay.
at VH1 and MTV.
Okay, got
I did
it.
mostly promos. I did the fashion awards and some big concerts and stuff like that.
So it was these days we call it a pivot. It was a kind of a big
I
pivot.
did my own field research on substances.
Okay, there we go. Now you and me both. I talk on this program about my own history, so that is part of your history. What did that make you? How did that sensitize you, let's say, into getting into the field?
Well, I was already well sensitized in terms of geriatric substance abuse from growing up in my family.
Okay.
So that, I think, got me more interested in older adults. I just didn't realize till I sort of got a handle on my own dual diagnosis, my own mental health and substance issues, what was going on when I returned home and took a look at some of the people around me
Okay.
and how they had now aged, but had not really put down the alcohol, or how I went to see my grandma and saw this giant bottle of pills the doctor had prescribed her and that she
Mm,
was taking, and kind of, wondering what the heck is going on here. And suddenly I realized how it was all around me,
mm,
just personally. And, I wasn't the only one, because in my family, it had been clearly, I was definitely the black sheep of my family. I
okay.
was the crazy one with the problems who went off to New York
Okay.
and,
Okay.
did
From
who
from
knows
where?
what.
Where?
I'm from Minneapolis,
Minneapolis. Okay, so the
from the
good
Midwest.
mess.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I
A
actually
good
made the.
Midwestern Scandinavian girl went
There
off
you
and
go.
did who knows what with
So
who knows what for
so
years.
yeah. Okay.
And then
And
when
then
I returned home, I was like, oh, hey, wait a minute now.
yeah.
There's something to be said about family systems.
Yeah. So we're live and in color.
Yeah,
Um, well, that's interesting because we do bring our past into everything that we do, and it's something that can really help us appreciate some of the issues we're getting into. How did you discover Smart Recovery?
I discovered Smart Recovery from the book Sober for Good that Ann Fletcher wrote about 20 years ago.
Mm,
I was in an outpatient treatment program in New York, and I was not very happy with it because it was very, well, 12-step oriented, let's
hmm
say. But so I was looking for some alternative, and Smart was listed in there. Had just started up at the Albert Ellis Institute, one meeting a week. So I started going to it, and I remember my counselor at the program told me if I went to Smart Recovery, I was going to die. And
wow.
so I understandably decided to say, F you,
hmm
I'm going to keep going.
Right. Well,
I'm
that's
going to show you.
that's
And
some
then a
of
few
us.
years later, maybe 5 years later or so, I ran into her at like a social work conference, and I was like, hey, I'm a student at Hunter now. How are you?
And I'm
She was
succeeding
very nice
and
to me too. Yeah,
I'm
guess what?
doing
I haven't
well.
died yet. And
Yeah. Yeah, here I am alive and in the flesh. That's
yeah,
interesting right there because we do have sometimes we'll take what people say and want to do, just show them that we can do
that's
something.
how I've been most of my life. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. Now I was detecting that. I didn't want to say it directly, but you reached the conclusion. So I did my job as a as a host. So there you were, both participating in Smart, learning about it. How did you decide to put it into practice or put it into your repertoire of skills? Let's say.
Well, it happened like naturally. I mean, I was not working. I was still working in film and television when I went to Smart, and it was. But I really enjoyed facilitating, and I felt like a light went off. Um, like running the groups and being under the tutelage of actually SMART's former vice president, Dr. Mickler Bishop. He was head of the Addiction Institute at the Ellis at the time. And he was the one who kind of encouraged me and a couple other people to sort of run with this, pursue it. So I decided to change careers. I walked away from a job at Women's Entertainment. I remember.
Okay.
And yes,
I remember
it was
that
a
hasn't.
staff job, not
Okay.
freelance. So
That
was a
wasn't
big deal.
that was around for a while, but no longer. I don't see it on cable
No,
listings.
I don't think that's around anymore, but yeah.
You're listening to the Smart Recovery Podcast. We're talking with Brett Saarela. She is a geriatric practitioner for mental health and addiction. She is talking about her discovery of Smart Recovery, how she started to use it. Well, we haven't quite gotten into how you started to use it after you became a clinical social worker.
Well, it just always naturally evolved. It seemed to be so practical and so apt to whatever I was doing. I just remember almost immediately taking worksheets or handouts from SMART and thinking, oh, well, this will apply perfectly to such and such client when I see them next week. Or I don't know, just modifying things almost from the get-go. And that wasn't even when I had substance abusing clients right away. It was just people with ordinary life situations. But who doesn't want to do a change plan worksheet, or who can't apply a cost benefit analysis when they have to make a difficult decision? It was just like the tools just made so much sense in almost any situation. And they're also a good engagement tool with clients. If you give someone, whether you do it with them and fill out the worksheet, or for some people to ask them, can you bring this back next week and fill it out? Well, guess what? They'll probably come back next week because they have something to show you then that they've worked on. And that's like half the battle, is just get people to come back,
Right.
Even if it's only halfway done, it's like, hooray, you returned. Now we can talk about it.
Yeah. So they've done something. They feel like there's a positive. They
Yeah.
haven't just thought about stuff. They've actually
Right.
done something. And that's what is so clearly an advantage for some people when it comes to smart recovery, is that there's practical benefits, there's practical tools, and you can focus on, like you said, the change, kind of the stages of change, the things that people do in order to live a different kind of life. Well, let's get in a little bit deeper into those issues of mental health and addiction. I was curious, you had talked a lot, or you had written about these barriers to detection among those in the geriatric population. Can you say more about that?
Okay. Well, now we're talking about people out in the world who are not, obviously they haven't come across you yet. This is when you talk about older adults and addiction, the sort of the catchphrase is usually there are folks who are unseen, untreated, and sort of like misdiagnosed. And so the first one is that we just don't see them, and part of it is because of lifestyle. This is part of it. People tend to be retired or not working. So they're not going to be sort of getting into trouble by not being able to have job performance issues, not getting in trouble by not being able to show up to functions with various life responsibilities involving kids, social functioning. They're going to be at home more, just not getting out and about, not driving. I'm now outside New York City. In upstate, so DUIs are a big deal up here, especially for younger people, as a huge source of a lot of times people's first referral or getting caught with something. Also unseen, because a lot of the ways substance abuse shows up tends to look like another problem. This is part of the misdiagnosed. You go into the doctor and you say, I haven't been sleeping well, I have bruises, I get headaches, this and that. And almost always a doctor, a nurse, or practitioner, substance abuse is not the first thing that's going to come to mind. They're going to think, oh, this person is old, they're lonely, they're depressed. Is it vitamin deficiency? Are they eating? Do they have cancer? Do they have some other kind of medical problem? And then
Hmm.
it's like way down the list of like 20 different things. If it's a memory thing, it must be dementia, it must be
Mm.
this, it must be that. It couldn't be the fact that this person is drinking too much, or that they're taking too much medication or misusing the medications. Um, so yeah, it tends to get slipped through, and a lot is just that people don't want to ask the questions, even
Mm.
though the doctor or nurse or social worker, whoever, may know I should be screening for how much this person is using in substances. Eh, I'm just not going to bother.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Well, I did trainings around the city at a lot of social work agencies on this topic. And a lot of the people simply said, it just feels really uncomfortable to ask somebody who is 20, 30, 40 years older than you questions about this. It feels like you're prying, like you're disrespectful. Um, it feels funny. It's like you wouldn't want to ask them about an STD.
Mm.
That's enough, you wouldn't want to ask them. It just seems unless the person is sort of rolling in, just reeking of booze
Hmm.
with,
Hmm.
needle marks, they look like traditional
Yeah.
homeless,
Yeah. And you can't
you're gonna
ignore it
kind
at
of
that
let them
point.
be.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
well, guess what? Those people generally are already in the system somehow.
Hmm.
They
Yeah.
have been
Sure.
for years,
Sure. Sure.
right? But the folks I'm talking about are what we tend to call generally the late onset users, um, which is about a third of this group.
Okay.
So if you think of the older adults who have substance use issues, all of them will say over 65. If you do screenings on these people, roughly about 15% or so may come up with some sign they have a problem. Of those 15%, about 10% have probably had problems most of their life, off
Mm.
and on. Maybe they were sober for a while, stop using, and then they go back to it. But there's a special little set of them, and we call them the late onset group, who never really had problems there throughout their whole life. But now that it's either post-retirement, post-death of a spouse, post finding out they have a really terrible medical diagnosis, I mean, it's usually some really bad turn of events, their use really kicks in. It might be that they're in chronic pain now
Hmm.
and they start trying to grab every opiate they could find.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it's something brand new for them. So they don't have the resources and the network to get any kind of treatment, whether it's professional treatment or just know about something like
Yeah.
SMART.
Yeah. Perhaps that plays into the sense that people don't want to ask because here was someone who was a quote success, who was an upstanding citizen for years. They may not be someone you would want to question as far as asking those maybe uncomfortable questions about do you feel like you have a problem using substances? Do you have any compulsive behaviors that are interfering with your enjoying life? Any of those things?
Yeah, no, that is another aspect of it for sure, which is even when it is recognized, there's two other views that are really commonly heard, which is it's the only pleasure he has left.
Mm.
You
Hmm.
know? Wow, he's lived a long life. He worked hard, took care of his family, and now his wife died. Who can blame him, right?
Okay. Okay.
And also well, look at Granny. She's not hurting anyone. So she likes to drink a little too much sherry and she gets a little wobbly. But, she's not driving anymore. She's not hurting anyone. Let's just let her be
Hmm. What
without.
what do you what do you say to that? I mean, there is some element of justification there, kind of minimalization perhaps, but what would you say if someone is saying those exact things?
I would say that is true. But is it possible that Granny could have a better life?
Mhm.
And if she's getting a little wobbly, does anyone realize, including Granny, how high her risk of a fall is? And if she does have a fall, how high her risk of having to go into a nursing home is? and how unpleasant that would be.
Mm-hmm.
And that if she wants to keep living alone independently in her apartment that she loves, perhaps at least reducing how much she has and making sure she doesn't have more than one nightcap.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, because a lot of what I did in my work was not about abstinence.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more of my work was about education and harm reduction.
Mm-hmm.
It really depended on the client, but it was a lot more of, so maybe having 3 is way too much for Granny at age 80, now that she weighs, you know, a hot 95 pounds,
Mm-hmm.
when
Mm-hmm.
that was fine for her, you know, 30 years ago,
Right.
right?
The consequences may change.
Exactly. Her body is totally different now. Now she takes other medication, you know, she just can't process that the same, but she does love to have the ritual of her nightcap. So what if we still did that, but gave it to her in a much smaller glass,
Okay.
not in the big glass? Or what if we gave it to her later in the evening, closer to when she's going to go to bed, so she doesn't wonder, you know, she's not antsy for it, or,
Yeah.
you know, that sort of thing.
So abstinence wouldn't necessarily be realistic, or the
Depends on
does.
the person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The end goal may be, some kind of moderation or some kind of way of, of still being someone who has a healthy lifestyle and someone who has things that they're engaged in and interested in, and not just sitting alone, using substances, if it came down to that.
For many, many people, abstinence is totally realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who can especially get engaged in any kind of a treatment or community support, even if it's like an online smart meeting or get out to treatment, the studies that have been done on older adults show they actually do better than younger adults in terms of staying abstinent, completing treatment, and being engaged. So for whether they just take it more seriously because it's much more for their health. But a lot of it has to do with, are they lined up with the right sort of support? Are they not the only old fish in the pool of all little guppies?
Okay.
You know, are they
sitting
not
around in a circle with
sitting around in the
yeah,
circle
okay.
with, like 20-year-olds all, complaining about how they're going to get back to their jobs, or how they're going to get back to college. There has to be a little bit of commonality and identity there.
Yeah.
Or if they do that for 1 hour of the day, fine, but then can there be another group where there was some of their peers, and their peers, it also has to do with gender and race and class and educational level. And I mean, it's not just their peers are just old.
Right. It's only
A
one
group of
aspect.
all
Sure.
African-American men may not be so comfortable to have like one white lady walk in. They might be like, what's she doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
sure.
So there are programs, a few programs out there where they tailor something for older adults, but then there's, studies about that say, well, but those aren't diverse enough. You're like, okay, you've got a special group for 50 plus, but is that 50 plus group all men?
Okay.
And then don't throw the one woman in, or do you know what I mean? So
yeah, you're trying to set up things that are going to be most successful
you
for
just
all
want to
involved.
help that person figure out what's most important to you. Is it the fact that you're in bereavement?
Yeah.
Or is it because you are in a wheelchair and you have to go somewhere that is ADA compliant? Is it because you don't know how to use technology, so getting to online meetings during COVID is going to be impossible? Like,
right.
What's the little hook for you?
All sorts of factors.
Yeah.
We're talking about geriatric mental health issues and addiction, substance use disorders. We're talking about the kinds of things that are sometimes a barrier to getting help. Some of the ways that once help is on the table, so to speak, it has to be, kind of put in a certain context and put in a certain way that is most successful, or has the chance to be most successful. And we're talking with Brett Saarela. She is a clinical social worker or has been a clinical social worker in New York City. Was your practice elsewhere, Brett?
Nope, just in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a private practice after I left the clinic I was at.
Okay. And you also are the vice president of the Smart Recovery USA board. How long have you been involved in that kind of leadership role with Smart?
Oh, quite a while,
Mm-hmm.
because I was on the board in New York City Smart, um, and then pretty soon I was on the board of the National Smart, and then became the vice president when Mickler stepped down. So I'm not even sure. And then now
Okay.
I'm also on the international board.
Yeah.
But don't worry, we finally have term limits. So I'm going to be stepping down from the national board at the
Well,
end of this year, at least taking a break.
it's been a good long time, and I'm sure that people have benefited the entire time you've been around. So thank you for your service to Smart. As an aside for that, can you talk a little bit more about some of the techniques? I know motivational interviewing is used in kind of this context, and Smart certainly subscribes to that. Tell me a little bit more about motivational interviewing and how it might help with the geriatric population.
Yes, well, motivational interviewing is sort of a cornerstone of Smart, and it really works well with this population for sure. I think that's why Smart is finally mentioned in the SAMHSA treatment improvement protocol for working with older adults. I was just looking at that because they updated the version in 2020. The last one was from like almost 10 years ago. And now Smart is listed all over it. But anyway, motivational interviewing, the shorthand way to think of it is, say, pretend you're Columbo and do the Columbo technique,
Mm-hmm.
which is pretend that you really don't know and don't really care that much what the person across from you is going to do with their life, or what they're going to decide to do with whatever perplexing issue they're facing.
Okay.
And so you're just going to ask them a series of open-ended sort of questions in a very non-threatening manner to guide them almost seamlessly to the answer that you want.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, like let's say, Luke, that you have a problem. Let's say, Luke, that I'm concerned that you've been eating too much during COVID.
Okay.
And I have no idea if you have been. Most everybody I know has been.
Yes.
So we'll say, so Luke, you're here today, and you mentioned that you noticed that you've put on a little weight during COVID. Is that true?
Yeah, Brett, I have been concerned about that. I mean, I think I haven't been outside as much.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it can be hard to get outside a little bit with the weather when it's too cold, and I suppose you might think it's hard to get outside when the weather's warm too, though. Is there anything that you like to do outside?
Well, I used to like riding my bike, but I'm kind of afraid right now. There's just so many cars on the road.
Oh, okay. So you have anxiety about the cars. And what if you didn't ride the bike? What would you be doing? Is there anything like?
Probably walking. I mean, walking at the park. There's a really great trail near me. That makes me think of that. There is really good trails around Cleveland that people always walk on, and you see lots of people too.
Yeah. And I imagine there'd be some flowers and birds and stuff now that it's springtime.
Yeah. And you know what? That would also keep me from sitting at home and eating.
It would. Yeah. Is there anybody you might want to walk with, or are you more of like a walk by yourself, meditate kind of guy?
I think I would probably walk with my friend Josie. She's a good
Okay.
walker.
Is that
Brett, thank
something?
you. You just straightened me out on my COVID eating habit. No, I see where you're going with that. It was very non-judgmental. You were inquiring. You were interested. I mean, I wanted to answer your questions because you seemed genuinely interested in what was going on with me.
It's a very gentle thing. And it's like, and when you don't, and what I did there too was a technique called roll with resistance. When I met with the resistance about your bike,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't try to force that you needed to do anything with your bike. We roll with it by going immediately to a different thing,
Okay.
right?
Okay. Well, it was acknowledged, but then, yeah, but like you said, then moving on to something different.
Right. And the same thing if it's about you wanting to help a person get treatment of some sort or go or do anything about their problem, whether if it's a mental health problem or a drug problem, if they're not interested in going to see the doctor, okay, well, maybe, what about, would you talk to a nurse?
Mm-hmm.
No, you don't want to talk to a nurse. Would you fill out this? Maybe you do a self evaluation online, or one that I print out for you.
Yeah.
Would you maybe do that? Would you be curious to see what your scores would be?
And
Okay.
there's that point you made earlier about then I feel like I'm doing something. I can maybe have more of a chance to come back because now I've done a few things. I want to show you what I've done. Um, that's good. Thank you. That was very
Right.
enlightening to do it in a role play there. I will say that we are dating ourselves a little bit by the mention of Columbo, the TV show from the 70s.
So
For
this is the geriatric talk.
Okay. For those who don't know, Peter Falk, the actor, played a great detective who was kind of frumpy, kind of, but really casual, really a character. And what I remember from that is he would often be leaving the room or the interview, and then he would stop for 1 second and say, "Oh, just one more thing," and then he would lay a question on him that would be revealing. Let's say.
Yes.
Now you make me want to go back and watch old episodes of of Columbo.
The devastating question.
Okay, so that's an actual thing. So there's motivational interviewing kind of in a nutshell. And then earlier you mentioned this cost benefit analysis, and that includes the benefits and rewards of both using a substance and not using it. And does that apply to the geriatric population? I mean, does that help look at the benefits each way?
That helps everybody as far as
Okay.
I'm concerned. But it really helps, I think, the geriatric population, because there is the idea, and it is in a lot of the literature, that older folks, at least the ones out there right now, the pre-World War II folks, have an especially high amount of shame and moral stigma around mental health and substance issues.
Okay.
And that's actually one of the reasons that SMART is a good fit, because we don't do the labeling of
Hmm.
you're an alcoholic, whatever. So it can be extremely eye-opening and liberating when I always start with what are the benefits, Granny, of having your couple of nightcaps every night? What do you think? What has it been doing for you recently?
Hmm.
Right. And it's kind of like, oh, the benefits. Well, this is just my indulgence. There's this feeling of like, how can there be benefits? This is like a naughty,
Mm,
if anything, it's a naughty, shameful thing. Like, oh
okay.
no, you wouldn't do it if there weren't benefits. You certainly wouldn't have started doing it way back when and be doing it now, or you wouldn't have picked it up recently. So what are those benefits? And then, so they list, it helps me relax.
Hmm.
It helps, these TV shows can be really boring. Now they seem funnier when I have a
Yeah.
couple.
Okay.
It helps me sleep, or I feel like it helps me sleep. It settles my stomach. It helps me not worry about COVID, or helps me
Sure.
not worry about my grandkids or whatever. And they list all these different things. And then from that, you get the secret list of, if you were to give it up or greatly reduce it, we now know we have these 5 things. We need to find out how to give you these benefits in a better, healthier way.
Mm.
What could we do to help you relax, soothe your stomach, help you sleep,
So
help
the
you not
the goal,
worry without
yeah,
alcohol?
yeah. So the goal hasn't changed. We all like feeling relaxed. We want to go
Right.
into, a restful sleep, all those
Mhm.
things, but there can be different ways to do that.
Correct.
We may listen to some music before bed. We may have, a conversation with someone that is very a trusted friend or family member. So there's would be benefits and rewards of not using or not overusing substances.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we have just a few minutes left. I wonder, speaking of Granny, I mean, can you give us some guidance for friends and family when there are older adults in their lives that may be experiencing, or we suspect they're experiencing some mental health issues or substance use?
Well, the one thing I was thinking about before this talk was I think it would be wonderful for some of these folks to go to our family and friends meeting,
Hmm.
because I think historically, traditionally, people have thought of our family and friends meeting as being for um, like the spouses or partners of people with a substance use problem or the parents of people with a substance use problem. But more and more, it is going to be for the adult children of someone with a substance use issue.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that may tweak the conversation a little bit, but I don't think it's going to change too much what tools and what kind of support people need. But I think it's going to change a little bit the population of who is in those family and friends meetings. And as that program grows, it may very well be that there may be a call to have a separate meeting
Hmm.
for people who are adult children.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Whether, well, also
We
for
don't have that yet because we don't
okay,
have, it's not a big enough group right
sure,
now. It's kind of a catch-all.
right.
Um, Another thing is to team with the person's doctor, um, especially primary care doctor or any doctor who is really that the older adult trusts and respects, because even a very brief intervention coming from a medical professional can have a huge impact on someone's behavior
Mm,
and can forego someone having to get to the stage where they need detox, rehab, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But just to share your concerns with the doctor before the meeting, before the appointment, and say, doctor, I'm a little worried that I think, this person has been drinking a little too much. Would you mind doing a brief alcohol screen with them at their next appointment? Because it would mean so much coming from you. Because,
right,
they
right,
think you're the cat's meow. You're
right.
the doctor.
You're such a nice young man or woman.
Yes, they're
Get that?
so handsome. Oh, so handsome.
Those are now. What about meetings, though? I was thinking when you said that for older adults, geriatric population, smart meetings online. Are there any of those or any plans for?
We don't have one at the moment, but I would love to have one. Right now, Smart is Smart has just started having specialized meetings. And the first group we specialized with is young people
Hmm.
for various reasons. And then we now have a couple of women's meetings. So I think there will be soon. Right now, older adults do pretty well in our meetings if they can get online or get to a meeting which is um, ADA compliant. There are
Hmm.
a few things I want to see happen with our materials in like the next revision, which is make sure we get some um, enlarged print
Hmm.
materials to help with
Okay.
reading.
Good point.
Perhaps have some of our materials be audio version as well.
Right.
And then also make sure to put out the word for facilitators when they're starting up meeting spaces to make sure places are ADA compliant.
Hmm.
As
Hmm.
I know in Manhattan, that's been a problem. For one, we have a lot of the rules are such, if you're in an old building, you don't have to comply
Yeah.
with that.
Well, just a simple thing like that, simple thing of ramp or, making some kind of accommodation. That's really, not a big deal if you're able, to just think about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any other thing you'd like to talk about? But where do you think the future of geriatric, the intersection of mental health and substance use, what does the future look like for treatment in that field?
There's going to be more specialized treatment for it. Right now, there's a few, but they're private and fairly expensive. There's Hanley Hazleton down in Florida, which is like a, like a residential program, 12-step based, but state of the art. My father actually went to a very interesting one, which was part of a wing of a nursing home in Minneapolis. Like he went to a detox, and then he stayed in this nursing home wing that was a treatment program for seniors. That was like for 6 months.
Interesting. So a longer term treatment and
Like a longer
in the
term
context.
treatment. If you had to have, co-occurring medical problems that were substance related, which he sure did. So
Okay.
yeah.
Over time. Yeah.
But yeah, and there's one in Albany, which is a outpatient, Albany, New York. So they're like scattered all over. According to the SAMHSA study I read, as of like 2 years ago, something like 23% of treatment programs claim a track for older adults, but that can simply be they offer a single group at some point during the day.
Right.
They don't really have a whole program. So I remember I had a huge problem. Actually, I had a few clients who wanted to be referred to like a residential treatment and had the money for it. And some of the places were like, oh, he has a walker. Oh, he can't come. We're not equipped for that.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I'm like, I have someone ready to go, and you can't.
Yeah. That's frustrating.
And
wow.
in New York City, you don't want, only treatments are in like hospitals, and he wanted to go like outside the city, but those are all in like campus settings.
Okay.
But with a walker, they were all like, oh, he can't go. No, all the buildings have steps and it's grassy. And I was like, Lord.
There's a failure of imagination and accommodation.
I know.
Anything else, Brett, as we wrap up here? It's just been a fascinating, look at this kind of issue and the fact that it has an intersection.
One more tiny anecdote. Here's another of one of my best interventions was a woman who, a very heavy drinker all her life. Near the end of her life, she had serious cirrhosis of the liver. She had like the extended abdomen, distended abdomen and everything. And she had been drinking about half a liter of vodka a day and everything, homebound. And my fabulous harm reduction intervention was to get her to switch her mixer for her vodka from seltzer to Ensure. and reduce vodka about in half.
Okay, brilliant though.
Yeah. That's slowly over time. I had her homemade pour water in to the vodka. Pour out vodka and pour water in slowly, so she wouldn't go into withdrawals.
Yeah, right.
With her doctor's help, and not to take her down cold turkey. So she would still have the equivalent, go from about 8 drinks a day to about 4.
Yeah.
And then mix it with Ensure.
You know what? That's real life. And I congratulations.
And then so much better, because she used to greet me at the door in like a nightie with like her makeup on, like.
Oh, geez, really
and then by
distorted.
The end, we did actual like life review at the end, where she could sit and talk to me about like things that had happened and her husband who had died, and she actually had like a closure.
Oh, that's very nice. That's a great story. That's Brett Saarela. She is a clinical social worker, had been in practice in New York City for years. And she's also the vice president of the Smart Recovery USA board. We've been talking about the geriatric population, mental health issues and needs, and also the treatment with substance use disorders. Brett, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Oh, so did I, Luke.
Take care. All right. You've been listening to the Smart Recovery Podcast. This is Luke Frazier. Until next time, stay healthy and stay connected.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Recovery Podcast. Be sure to visit smartrecovery.org, where you can subscribe to our e-newsletter and check out additional podcasts, blogs, videos, and more. If you found today's podcast interesting and helpful, we encourage you to share it with others. You can also find information about SMART facilitator training and other ways to participate in our important work. To help us continue to provide recovery support to all the individuals who need us, please consider making a tax-deductible donation at smartrecovery.org/donation, or simply click the donate button on our homepage. Thanks again for listening, and we hope you'll join us for the next Smart Recovery podcast. Until then, stay safe and stay healthy.